Hey! Hi, how you doing? Wait, what the fuck?
Hey! Hi! How you doing? Haha, you fools! You expected Gamertron? Too bad! It was I, Game Revo. Okay, shh, getting close. I've managed to sneak my way onto Gamertron's channel, as I'm such a master of stealth. He has no idea I'm here, the fool. You may be wondering, Revo, what are you doing here? Well, I had an issue with some things Gamertron said recently, and now it's my turn to set the record straight. His recent video on Rage 2 was actually pretty good. I was enjoying it until I heard this.
As soon as we transition from the id portion of the game to the avalanche portion of the game, the fun comes to a screeching halt.
Okay, so I'm not going to entirely defend Avalanche's latest works. Just Cause 3 was a technical mess, and Just Cause 4 was such a step back for the series that I didn't even pick it up. But I can't stand by and let Gamertron diss Avalanche's open world design, when it's one of the few unique approaches you can find in such a bloated genre. They have their flaws, certainly, but they're anything but empty. Just Cause 2 doesn't inflate playtime by forcing excessive amounts of useless side content onto its map. Instead, it places countless secrets and interesting locations between its many military bases. You have the nightclub on the Blimp, the island that's chock full of lost references and veteran Japanese soldiers, a hot air balloon that you can actually fly, a bubble gun, the beached whale, the racetrack. These are locations which for the most part serve no benefit to progression, but they're instead fun interactables and Easter eggs to encourage exploration. The scale of its map also allows it to explore many distinct environments and biomes to give the world an incredible amount of variety. Mr. Shooty Bang Bang Gamertron calls this empty. I'd say that their game worlds could be made to appear less empty by introducing more wildlife and NPCs doing things other than traveling and shooting, but that's a presentation issue, not a gameplay one.
Objection!
I see the game you're playing, Game Revo. So far, solid points, but if I may be so bold, I would argue that wildlife, more NPCs, and more NPC interactions are a gameplay issue, not a presentation one. Presentation entails the game's graphics and art style, but when it comes to more AI entities roaming the open world, it gives players far more options to interact with and experiment in the open world sandbox. It also makes the in-game environments feel more lived in, and it just gives players something fun to distract themselves with when traversing the more barren parts of open world games, where there's no story missions or side missions to be found. So again, I argue this is not a presentation issue, this is indeed a gameplay issue. I say the more AI to interact with, whether that be wildlife, NPCs, or enemies, the more the merrier. They make open world games all the more engaging to explore and play in. But that's just my 2 cents. Please, continue.
Another big pillar of Just Cause open world design is the concept of making your own fun. It is true that you can destroy bases in the most mundane way possible, shooting them, and if you do that, it does appear that the world is filled with copy-paste content. Again, keep Mr. Shooty Bang Bang in mind here. But much greater variety is introduced if you opt not to use the simplest approach and start picking toys out of the sandbox that Avalanche games often provide. The grappling hook in Just Cause 3 can be used to attach a vehicle to a helicopter that can then be used as a wrecking ball. It can also retract to slam 2 enemies together or to bring a large structure crashing down on them. The Infinite C4 can be modified to apply boosters, allowing you to turn any vehicle into a makeshift ground missile. However, these systems wouldn't work if they didn't have their own limitations. C4 has to be applied up close, and the grappling hook requires very precise aim, which can be a challenge when you're actively being shot at. The design of combat and the design of each military base is such that you're pushed to change tactic often. Just Cause 3 in particular offers so many things that you can do from the air that entire bases can be completed without touching the ground. Simply foregoing a life of boots-on-the-ground gunplay opens you up to a much broader, involved experience. The best thing about this is that these tools can be applied outside of explicit combat zones. Areas that may seem empty actually offer open playgrounds for causing all forms of chaos, for no reason other than because you want to. Adding additional incentives for playing in certain ways is definitely a benefit, but is by no means a required one, if the mechanics and systems are so enjoyable that you want to play with them anyway. This approach makes the experience far more fun and replayable than, say, the Ubisoft checklist design, where maps are stuffed with side missions that all follow the same structure and become tiring.
Objection!
My oh my, hold the phone there, Buster Brown. I may be sensing a wee bit of double standards here. Someone's not giving Ubisoft a fair shake. Now granted, I have not played every Ubisoft open world game ever made, but from the ones I have played, while there are absolutely similar structures and content design, the actual open world sandbox and gameplay mechanics allow for multiple playstyles. Admittedly, it usually boils down to guns blazing or stealth, but there are sub-variations on both of those playstyles. For example, there are multiple means of stealth in the Far Cry games, whether it be bow and arrow, silenced weapons, or melee takedowns. In the Watch Dogs games, you're able to actually hack and manipulate your environment to take out enemies without even having to use a weapon, and even being able to use fun toys like drones to complete objectives and take out enemies without even needing to step into enemy territory. Whereas with Avalanche games and their open world sandbox and mechanics, it usually always boils down to, specifically in Just Cause, shoot everything, blow everything up. Yes, while the grappling hook is a fun mechanic and tool, but on higher difficulties in those games, it's more likely to get you killed trying to have fun with and experiment with it. It's more efficient, and in your best interest to use guns and explosives. Just Cause open world sandbox and gameplay mechanics are certainly fun to fool around with, but they're inefficient in actual combat scenarios. In Ubisoft games, every weapon, every tool, every gadget, every ability has a purpose and allows the player to completely choose their own playstyle. Yes, Avalanche games and Just Cause games do give players the freedom to make their own fun, but it's not the most polished, not the most tightly designed. Make your own fun game design. Oh, but I'm so sorry, I interrupted you again. Please continue.
The vast open space between combat zones could be seen as a slog to traverse, especially if you're walking between locations like a complete divvy. That's why Avalanche's best offerings make the act of traveling as fun as possible. Just Cause 2 featured para-grappling, where good control of your movement and effective grappling hook aim rewards you with a momentum-based method of skimming across any distance and any gradient. Just Cause 3's wingsuit offers a much faster take on this concept, encouraging you to fly low to the ground to grapple horizontally for increased speed. These systems are enjoyable to the point that I find myself returning to the games just to travel. I haven't played Rage 2, but it may be that their method of travel just isn't very exciting. If that's the case, I believe that implementing a more exciting on-foot movement system would fix many of its problems. Say, for example, that you could surf in the game a la Tribes. This would create a smaller disconnect between traveling and gunplay, which would help make the entire ludic identity much more cohesive.
Oh, ludic identity. I can use a thesaurus too, Revo. You hoity-toity laggard plebeian. Those are all real words, you can look them up.
Mad Max and Rage 2 suffer from the fact that getting out of your vehicle adds one level of abstraction between driving gameplay and on-foot action. In Mad Max's case, the on-foot strongholds are noticeably weaker in design than the open-world driving, and Rage 2 appears to be the opposite. In my opinion, better unifying these systems would do far more benefit to them than just slapping more content onto the map. Gamertron suggests that reducing the incredible scale of these maps would reduce the dilution of content, thereby improving their design. These areas are provided to give the player more room to experiment with the game's sandbox mechanics, and to break up the game's pacing. If he really wants shiny keys to be dangled in front of him at all times, why not just use fast travel? Look, okay, I understand where he's coming from. What he's asking for is a much more concentrated, refined experience, evoking the sort of meticulous pacing you find in linear shooters. I am being careful to paint him in a fair light, and to not make him look foolish. But if you know him, you can imagine why that's somewhat of a challenge.
Objection!
I got no comeback. That was well played. My hat is off to you, sir. Motherfucker.
When they're at their best, Avalanche's open worlds are made engaging from dynamic situations and events that can occur. Mad Max is the crown jewel of this concept, offering roaming enemies, sandstorms, and other unexpected events that give the barren desert a surprising degree of unpredictability. These systems work best as natural elements of the world. You aren't pulled out of the experience by a mandatory cutscene or sent to an enclosed area. This is why, if we look at other open worlds in games, I think many fail to make effective use of their environment. In the Far Cry games, I find the scripted main missions to be a far cry from the camps that have been naturally inserted into the open world roaming experience. That gives you the freedom to approach them in any way, but it also gives you the choice not to approach them if you don't wish to. Forcibly removing the player from the world and requiring them to complete certain objectives in a vacuum chamber can actually work if the timing and pacing of these sections is well controlled, and not allowed to balloon out into every interaction between the player and the world. I will admit that Avalanche's recent offerings have provided far fewer exciting open worlds than they used to. Just Cause 4 lacks the attention to detail that the previous titles thrived on. Mad Max can often feel like you're repeating the same objectives ad infinitum, and I imagine that Rage 2 suffers from many of the same issues. However, I feel like this has less to do with the underlying design faults, and more to do with the unfinished state that many of their games release in. To his credit, Gamertron did cite this as one of their major failings. Avalanche needs to take more time to polish and refine the worlds in their games, and if they do, I think the general consensus surrounding them would change dramatically. Anyway, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you liked the video in any way, shape or form, be sure to hit the like button. Wait. Actually, don't bother. If you like the video in any way, shape or form, subscribe to Game Revo. We'll see how he likes that. Whew, I'm relieved we never got caught slinking around his turf. I'm very grateful for his support, but he is a devious one. If he knew what we'd been up to here, I'm not sure what would happen. But we did it! We got in, fought the system, and got out again without his eyes looming over us. It's the perfect crime.
The perfect crime, you say? Oh, Revo, my boy, wait till you see what I have in store for you.